Millionaire bride wept in the woods. A singing baby crawled to her in the rain. The runaway bride. The wedding guests were still dancing when Annabelle Hartley slipped the pearl-handled derringer from her garter and pressed it against her temple. Rain hammered the French windows of the Hartley mansion, drowning out the orchestra's waltz. Through the gauze of her diamond veil, she watched her new husband, Judge Samuel Whitmore, shake hands with her father. Money changed hands. Papers were signed. She was livestock, sold and branded. "Don't," whispered a voice. Annabelle turned. Her lady's maid Maria stood in the doorway of the powder room, eyes wide with understanding. "There's another way," Maria said, pressing a bundle of clothes into Annabelle's trembling hands. "The old trapper's cabin, Pine Ridge, go." Thunder cracked. Annabelle lowered the gun. 10 minutes later, she was running through the woods in stolen breeches and a cowhide jacket, her wedding dress abandoned like shed skin. The derringer bounced against her hip. Behind her, the mansion blazed with light and laughter. No one had noticed the bride was gone. The pines swallowed her whole. Rain turned the forest floor to mud. Her silk slippers disintegrated within minutes, leaving her barefoot and bleeding. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. The weight of 23 years of suffocation pushed her forward. She found the cabin by pure instinct, a rotting structure consumed by moss and neglect. The door hung on one hinge. Inside, darkness and the smell of decay. She collapsed on the dirt floor and finally let herself weep. That's when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Soft, rhythmic, humming. Annabelle's hand found the derringer. "Who's there?" The humming continued, a melody she'd never heard but somehow recognized. It pulled at something deep in her chest, something that had been locked away since childhood. She crawled toward the sound. Lightning illuminated the cabin for a split second, and she saw it, a child. No more than 2 years old, naked except for mud and bruises, crawling across the floor with purpose, humming that impossible song. The baby reached her and climbed into her lap as if it belonged there, as if it had been waiting. Annabelle's tears mixed with rain. The child's humming vibrated through her bones, loosening knots she didn't know existed. For the first time in her life, she felt something crack open inside her. Not breaking, blooming. "Where did you come from, little one?" she whispered, cradling the child. The baby's eyes opened, brown as river stones, ancient as the mountains. A finger pointed east toward the valley. The humming grew stronger, and Annabelle could have sworn she heard words hidden in the melody. Names, promises, warnings. The song of forgotten names dawn came like a whisper. Annabelle woke to find the child curled against her chest, still humming softly. In daylight, the bruises were worse, purple fingerprints on tiny arms, cuts on small feet. Someone had hurt this baby. Someone had thrown it away. She wrapped the child in her jacket and ventured outside. The storm had passed, leaving the world clean and sharp. Following the child's pointing finger, she discovered a trail she'd never seen before. Narrow, almost invisible, marked with symbols carved into trees. They walked for hours. The baby never cried, only hummed and pointed. The trail led to a clearing where the earth was disturbed. Fresh dirt. Too much of it. Too neat. Annabelle's stomach turned. She'd heard whispers in town. The Shoshone choir that performed at the church. The orphanage that caught fire. Children who vanished in the night. Her father always said it was Indian trouble, best left alone. The baby's humming grew louder. Other voices seemed to join it, an impossible chorus rising from the ground itself. "God Almighty," Annabelle breathed. She knew what this was. Who was buried here? Footsteps behind her. She spun, derringer raised. "Easy there, miss." A black man in a pastor's collar held up his hands. "I mean no harm. You're Reverend Solomon, from the Colored Church." "I am, and you're the Hartley girl who disappeared last night. The whole town's looking for you." "Let them look." Solomon's eyes found the child. His face went gray. "Lord have mercy. That's little Sarah singing crow. We thought she died in the fire." "What fire?" "The one your husband ordered, to clear the land for the new courthouse." Solomon's voice broke. 32 children, the whole Shoshone orphanage. They said no survivors. The baby Sarah sang louder. The sound was grief and fury and love all at once. Annabelle felt it fill her lungs, her throat, and her mouth. "They're buried here," she said.
It wasn't a question.
"Judge Whitmore supervised it personally. Made my boys dig at gunpoint. Said it was a tragedy, but the land was needed for progress." Solomon knelt beside a small mound. "I come here to pray, to remember their names." "Tell me." "What?" "Their names. Tell me all their names." Solomon's eyes searched hers. Whatever he found there made him nod slowly. Merry Little Feather, age 7. James Running Bear, age 5. Rebecca Moondancer, age 9. As he spoke, Sarah's humming wove around the names, giving them weight, giving them wings. Annabelle memorized each one, carving them into her heart beside the scars her father had left. "What will you do?" Solomon asked when the last name was spoken. Annabelle looked at Sarah, at the mass grave, and at the mountains that had witnessed everything. "I'm going to teach this town how to remember." The voice of the valley. Annabelle didn't return to town. She couldn't. Not with Sarah's song in her bones and 32 names carved into her heart. She made the cabin livable, patched the roof, hauled water, and trapped rabbits. Solomon brought supplies in secret, along with news. "Your husband says you were kidnapped by outlaws. There's a $1,000 reward." Let him lie. He's planning something worse. New laws. Any Indian child found without papers will be sent to his reform school. It's already built, where the old copper mine used to be. Annabelle remembered the copper mine, a pit of darkness that swallowed men whole. He's gonna disappear more children. Unless someone stops him. Sarah crawled between them, humming. Her bruises had healed, but she never spoke words, only sang. And when she sang, Annabelle heard things, memories that weren't hers, pain that belonged to others, and truth that powerful men had buried. "Teach me," Annabelle said suddenly. "Teach you what?" "Their songs, the Shoshone choir. Teach me what they sang." Solomon's eyes widened. "Those are sacred. I only know them because Pastor Red Cloud shared them before he died. They're not for white women?" Annabelle's laugh was bitter. "I'm not white anymore. I'm nothing. I'm nobody, which means I can be anybody." She lifted Sarah into her arms. "Teach me." So he did. Night after night, by candlelight, with Sarah humming harmony, Solomon taught Annabelle the songs of the scattered tribes. Songs of mourning, songs of war, songs that could wake the dead and shame the living. Her voice had always been pretty trained for parlor recitals and church hymns. But now it grew wild, raw. It scraped against her throat like truth fighting to get out. Sarah would climb into her lap and add her wordless melodies, and together they sounded like wind through graveyards, like rivers over bones. "You're going to get yourself killed," Solomon warned. "I'm already dead, have been since I was born." Annabelle smiled, and it was as sharp as broken glass. "But this child crawled through a storm to find me. That means something." "What?" "It means it's time for the dead to sing." 3 months passed. Annabelle's father hired Pinkertons. Whitmore hired bounty hunters. But none could find the woman who'd learned to move like smoke, to sing like the wind. She appeared at the edges of town meetings, her voice carrying the names of the dead through windows. She sang outside the saloon where Whitmore's men drank, making them spill their whiskey and remember what they'd done. And always Sarah was with her. The child who wouldn't speak, but whose humming could crack stone hearts open. The town began to whisper. Some said Annabelle had gone mad. Others said she'd become something else, a vengeful spirit, a voice of judgment. But a few, the ones who'd lost children to mysterious fires and sudden disappearances, began to listen, to remember, to question the Judgment Day. The Reform School's opening ceremony was the event of the season. Judge Whitmore had invited dignitaries from 3 states. Even the territorial governor attended. They gathered on a wooden platform overlooking the old copper mine, now converted into a modern facility for wayward youth. Annabelle watched from the tree line, Sarah strapped to her back. 3 months in the wilderness had changed her. Gone was the porcelain doll. In her place stood something harder, hungrier. The Derringer was loaded, but she had a different weapon now. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whitmore began, "today we bring civilization to the savage, order to chaos, righteousness to..." A voice cut through his speech, high and clear and impossible to ignore. "Merry Little Feather, age 7. The crowd turned, searching for the source. "James Running Bear, age 5. Annabelle stepped from the woods. Her hair was wild, her clothes torn, but her voice was pure as church bells. "Sarah Singing Crow, age 2. The child on her back joined in, humming a counter melody that made horses rear and women weep without knowing why. "Annabelle," Whitmore's face went purple. "Thank God, you're alive. Come here, darling, you're clearly unwell." Rebecca Moondancer, age 9. She walked closer, still singing names. Each one rang across the valley like an accusation. The crowd began to shift, uncomfortable. Some recognized the names. The missing children, the fire. Thomas White Eagle, age 4. "Stop this immediately," Whitmore gestured to his men. "She's hysterical, grab her." But Annabelle had reached the platform. She climbed up, still singing, and the men stepped back. There was something in her voice, something that made grown men remember their mothers, their sins and their graves waiting. "These are the children you buried," she said, speaking now instead of singing. 32 voices silenced so you could build on their land. 32 songs you tried to steal. "Lies," Whitmore sputtered. "This woman is disturbed." Sarah crawled down from Annabelle's back. The toddler stood on unsteady legs and opened her mouth. What came out wasn't a child's voice. It was a choir. All 32 children singing at once. Their names and dreams and last moments pouring from one tiny throat. The governor's wife fainted. Strong men wept openly. The truth hung in the air like smoke from a fire that wouldn't die. "Where did you bury them?" Annabelle asked quietly. Whitmore's hand went to his pistol. "You're insane." "Where?" The word wasn't shouted. It was sung, and it carried the weight of every mother who'd lost a child. Every prayer unheard, every grave unmarked. Windows shattered in the reform school below. The platform groaned. "The North Field," someone whispered. One of Whitmore's men, pale and shaking. "We buried them in the North Field. God forgive us." The confession broke the spell.
The crowd erupted.
Some called for justice, others for order. Whitmore pulled his gun, aimed at Annabelle. Solomon's voice joined theirs from the crowd. Then another. The few Shoshone who'd survived, hidden in the valley, emerged singing. The black churchgoers added their harmonies. Even some whites, shamed by the truth, lent their voices. The song grew until it seemed the mountains themselves were singing. A judgment day not of fire but of sound. Whitmore's gun wavered. He looked at his wife in the crowd, at his investors, and at the reform school built on murdered children's land. The barrel turned slowly upward. "No," Annabelle said. "You don't get to escape." The gunshot echoed across the valley. But Whitmore had fired into the air, not his head. He fell to his knees, finally understanding. Death would have been mercy. Living with the truth was the real punishment. The governor, face ashen, stepped forward. "Arrest him. Arrest them all. And for God's sake, find those children's bodies. Give them a proper burial." As the soldiers moved in, Sarah toddled to the edge of the platform. She hummed one last note, soft, forgiving, final. The mass grave in the North Field seemed to sigh in response. Annabelle picked up the child and held her close. "It's over," she whispered. Sarah shook her head and pointed to the crowd. To the Shoshone emerging from hiding. To the black congregation standing tall. To the white townspeople finally seeing what they'd chosen not to see. Not over. Beginning. What the rain brings. 1 year later, the Dust Creek Children's Home stood where the reform school was meant to be. Annabelle ran it with Solomon and Maria, teaching all children, white, black, and native, to read, sing, and remember. Sarah's singing crow grew strong and bright, though she never spoke words. Her humming could still call rain, summon memories, and heal wounds that medicine couldn't touch. She slept each night in Annabelle's arms, 2 souls saved by song. Judge Whitmore served 10 years of hard labor. The real punishment came after living in a world where everyone knew what he'd done, where children's voices followed him like ghosts. He died alone, calling for forgiveness that wouldn't come. The 32 were reburied with full honors in the cemetery, not the mass grave. Their names were carved in stone and sung every Sunday in the integrated church Solomon built. The Shoshone choir reformed stronger than before. And Annabelle? She never remarried, never returned to her father's world of silk and contracts. She lived in the wooden house she built with her own hands. Sarah always at her side, teaching children that the most dangerous thing in the world wasn't a gun or a government. It was a voice that refused to be silenced. On rainy nights, they say you can still hear it, the sound of children singing in the woods around Dust Creek. Not ghosts, memories, promises. The sound of truth flowing downhill like water, washing the valley clean. Some called her the Mad Woman of Pine Ridge, others the Mother of Songs. But Sarah knew the truth. She was simply a woman who'd been dying of silence until a singing baby crawled through the rain and taught her she was born to make noise. "You never told me," Solomon said one evening, watching Sarah teach the other children a wordless song. "Why did you really run that night? Before you knew about any of this?" Annabelle was quiet for a long moment. "My mother died when I was 7. The last thing she said to me was, 'Don't let them make you quiet.' I forgot for 16 years. Then I put on that wedding dress and I remembered. I was about to become another silent woman in a silent house, married to a man who collected wives like trophies. And now, she smiled, watching Sarah's small hands conduct an invisible orchestra. Now I know why she crawled to me in that storm. The dead needed a voice. The living needed the truth. And sometimes, she paused as Sarah's humming filled the air. Sometimes a woman has to lose everything to find out she was born to sing. Solomon nodded. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Sarah looked up, smiled her secret smile, and hummed louder. The other children joined in, their voices rising to meet the storm. In the cemetery, rainwater pooled around 32 headstones, each carved with a name, an age, and a single word: remembered. The reckoning 5 years had passed since the night Annabelle ran into the woods. The Dust Creek Children's Home had grown from a single building to a small village. Dormitories, a schoolhouse, and workshops where Shoshone elders taught traditional crafts alongside reading and arithmetic. Sarah Singing Crow, now 7, moved through it all like a benevolent spirit, her humming a constant thread that held the community together. But peace was fragile in the Wyoming Territory. The railroad was coming, and with it, men who saw opportunity in chaos. Cornelius Hartley stood at his daughter's gate, backed by a dozen hired guns. Age had bent him, but greed kept him upright. Beside him stood a thin man in a federal marshal's badge. "Annabelle," her father called, "you've had your rebellion. Time to come home." She emerged from the main house, Sarah's hand in hers. The years had carved new lines in her face, sun and sorrow and strength. "This is my home. You're still my daughter, my property according to the law. And this," he gestured at the buildings, the children watching from windows, "this den of mongrels and miscreants sits on land I own. You sold that land to the territory for the reform school, which was never built. The contract's void. I want my land back, and you're coming with me." "The marshal here has papers." The marshal shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, your father has legal custody until you're 25 or married. Since your husband's in prison." "My husband was a murderer." "Alleged," Hartley spat. "And even if true, the marriage stands. You belong to him, and he signed custody to me." He smiled, cold as winter moonlight. "I've already arranged your next marriage. A senator from Missouri, widower, needs a mother for his 6 children." Sarah's humming rose, soft but insistent. Other children began to appear from the schoolhouse, the gardens, and the workshops. Shoshone, Black, Mexican, Chinese, and white. All the thrown-away children Annabelle had gathered. They formed a circle around her, their voices joining Sarah's wordless song. "You can't take her," said a teenage boy, Thomas, one of the first orphans she'd saved. "She's our mother now." "She's nobody's mother," Hartley snarled. "She's a mad woman who needs to be locked away for her own good. Marshal, do your duty." The marshal's hand moved to his gun, then stopped. The children's song had shifted, become something older, deeper. It was the song Sarah had hummed in the cabin that first night. The song of the lost choir, the buried children, the silenced voices. But now it had power behind it. 5 years of healing, of community, of truth spoken aloud. The hired gun's horses began to panic. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something else. Justice, perhaps. Or judgment. "What witchcraft is this?" Hartley stumbled backward. "Not witchcraft," Solomon said, emerging from the church with his congregation behind him. "Truth. You see, Mr. Hartley, we've been doing some research. About you, about your business dealings, about where your money really comes from." Maria stepped forward, holding a leather journal. "Your daughter taught us to read, Mr. Hartley. To write, to keep records. This is your former bookkeeper's confession. The one who fell from his hotel window last year? He didn't fall, and he left behind some very interesting documentation about your involvement in selling Indian children to work camps back east." The color drained from Hartley's face. "You can't prove anything." "We can," said a new voice. The territorial governor walked through the gate, flanked by federal agents. Not the corrupt local marshal, but real investigators. "Miss Hartley sent us quite a package of evidence. It seems you and the late Judge Whitmore were partners in more than just this land grab." "Annabelle, you stupid girl." "My name," she said quietly, "is Anna Singing Crow. I gave myself a new name when Sarah gave me a new life. And you're right, Father. According to your law, I belong to you. So arrest me along with him. Let the world see what happens when property fights back." The children's song grew louder. Sarah stepped forward, her ancient eyes fixed on Hartley. When she opened her mouth, it wasn't a hum that emerged, but a word, her first spoken word in 5 years. Go! The word hit Hartley like a physical blow. He staggered, clutched his chest, and fell to his knees. The hired guns threw down their weapons. The corrupt marshal tossed his badge in the dirt. Get him out of here, the governor ordered. As the federal agents hauled Hartley away, he called over his shoulder, the land transfer stands. This place is legally incorporated as the Dust Creek Children's Trust. No one can take it from you now. As the dust settled, Annabelle knelt beside Sarah. You spoke. Sarah smiled and shook her head. She wouldn't speak again for years. But in that moment, she'd said the only word that mattered. The word that sent evil away and let love remain. The last song 20 years later, Sarah Singing Crow stood at the pulpit of the Dust Creek Unity Church. She was 27 now, tall and strong, with her mother Anna's fierce eyes and her birth mother's ancient grace. She could speak when necessary, though she preferred to sing. The church was packed. People had come from 3 states to hear her. Not because she was famous. Those stories of the singing child who could summon truth had spread far. They came because everyone eventually needed to remember how to feel. In the front row sat Anna, gray-haired now but still straight-backed. Beside her were Solomon, Maria, and hundreds of children they'd raised. Some had stayed to teach the next generation. Others had gone into the world, carrying their songs with them, teaching other towns to remember their own buried truths. 25 years ago, Sarah began, her voice carrying the hum of rivers and mountains. A broken woman ran into the woods to die, and a broken child crawled through the rain to live. They saved each other, not through strength or wealth or law, but through a song. She raised her hands and the congregation stood. Not just the grown children of the home, but townspeople, travelers, and seekers. All drawn by the story of a place where voices weren't silenced, but celebrated. Sing with me, Sarah said. Not my song, not their song, your song. The one buried in your chest, the truth you've been afraid to speak, the name you've forgotten, the child you were before the world taught you to be quiet. And they sang, each voice different, discordant at first. A cacophony of pain and joy and fear and hope. But slowly, Sarah's humming wove through them, finding the harmony in chaos, the music in noise. Anna closed her eyes and remembered that night in the cabin. The storm, the gun, the child who'd saved her life by teaching her to use her voice. You did it, little one, she whispered. You woke us all up. The singing continued long into the night. And when the last voice finally fell silent, the sun was rising over Dust Creek. A new day, a new chance to speak truth. In the cemetery, 32 headstones caught the morning light. But these graves were no longer places of sorrow. They were monuments to memory, promises that the forgotten would be named, the silenced would be heard, and the lost would be found. And in the children's home, a new baby cried, abandoned at the gate in the night, like so many before. Anna, though old now, was the first to reach the basket. Hello, little one, she said, lifting the infant. Welcome to a place where you'll never have to be quiet. The baby's cries softened. And then, impossibly, it began to hum. The cycle continued. The song persisted. And in Dust Creek, Wyoming, the rain always brought music. And the music always brought truth. And the truth always set someone free. The echo that remains 50 years after that night in the rain, a young historian named David Hartley came to Dust Creek. He was writing his dissertation on Western reform movements. But really, he was looking for his family's shame. His great-great-grandfather Cornelius had died in prison, taking his secrets with him. But stories persisted. The Dust Creek Children's Trust was now the Dust Creek Institute, a renowned center for music therapy and social justice. Sarah Singing Crow, ancient now but still humming, met him at the gate. You have his eyes, she said simply, but not his heart. Come. She led him to a room he'd never find in any official history. The walls were covered with photographs, documents, and names. Not just the 32, but hundreds of others. Children saved, families reunited, communities healed, all because one woman learned to sing. My mother, Anna, died 10 years ago, Sarah said. But before she went, she made me promise to wait for you. For me. For a Hartley who would come seeking truth instead of profit. She left you this. It was Anna's journal. The whole story written in her careful hand. The night she ran, the child in the storm, songs that changed everything. And at the end, a single paragraph. To the Hartley who reads this, you are not your blood. You are not your name. You are the choices you make and the songs you sing. I forgave your family long ago. Now forgive yourself and sing. David wept then, for ancestors he'd never known and crimes he'd never committed but somehow carried. Sarah's ancient hand touched his shoulder. Your great-great-aunt gave me my voice, she said. Now I give you yours. What will you do with it? He knew without thinking. He would write the truth. All of it. The beauty and horror, the loss and redemption. He would name the unnamed and remember the forgotten. He would use his privilege and education to amplify voices still being silenced. Teach me, he said. Teach me to sing, Sarah smiled. And in that smile was Anna's fierceness, Solomon's faith, Maria's courage, and the dreams of 32 children who died for someone else's greed, but lived forever in song. She began to hum. And David, last of the Hartleys, learned to harmonize. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the mountains. But in Dust Creek, no one feared the rain anymore. They knew what it would bring. Songs, truth. And sometimes, if you listened carefully, you heard the sound of a baby crawling through the darkness, looking for someone who needed to be saved. The child sang what others tried to bury. And the woman who once wept became the voice of a town that had forgotten how to feel. And their song echoed through generations, proving that some truths once spoken can never be silenced again. If this story stirred something within you, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that set us free.